All right, so here's the spread. I've cut pieces for flowers. I should have, by my counts, enough to fill them all in. But still have extra, enough to cut some pieces here and there, and a bunch of little chips. I can make whatever shapes I need out of smaller pieces as well. To start gluing down our pieces, we need a couple of things. This is sort of optional on this step. You're not, unless you're like cutting while you go. Maybe wear them on the top of your head, you know? You like flip them down and then be like, pa, 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 and then flip them back up and like, na, 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 na. You're gonna need your glue, your template with your glass piece, tweezers, your skewers, which you'll notice you have some that are kind of a sawed off point and some that are sharper. That is to help kind of clear the glass around and in between pieces when you have too much glue and it kind of splooges up. You can get in between thin little areas with the sharp one, and then if you need to kind of like clear around the edge of a piece, I found these like semi-pointed ones work really well to just go flat up against the glass and kind of drag a clean line. Then you also need your razor blade. This is to kind of clean up glue as you go along. I have a spare piece of glass that I like to put my glue on. I just use the same one for every project. The first one that I did before I started using this, I would just put a dab of glue in the corner and then kind of dot from that, place my pieces and kind of fill in around my glue spot. And then you kind of eventually get to an area where you don't have any more free glass. And then I would take like a scrap piece from the pile and put your glue dab on there and work off that to finish the last bit of your piece. Let's turn this around and we'll drop our glue in a place where there's not as much going on. And I'm just gonna do like a dime sized bead, maybe even less than that. And then I'm just gonna fucking hit the ground running. I didn't tell you, but on the first round, I have some pieces you'll see they're like flat here on the edge. I started nipping the ends. I'm gonna keep an eye out for them as I go and nip them off. But see, I just kind of took the very edge of it, just like barely on the edge, and nipped that and just got the slightest little baby bit of an arch to the interior of the petal. And I feel like that looks a lot nicer, but you know, to each their own. All right, I want to get a good solid coat on this entire backside with enough that when I push down, there's going to be just a small kind of bead of glue around the edge, that the glue is coming just out to the edge. You don't want so much glue that you have this large gooping glob of glue that splooges out all around the piece. You need to be able to get the grout all the way down to the glass in more than a few spots. Do you know what I mean? So it can be like that in a couple areas, that's fine, but it can't be like that over the entire piece. There needs to be places where the grout's getting all the way down, and setting the structure and the strength for the piece. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is, and these pieces are nice because they're big enough you can kind of do it by hand too if the tweezer's a little too wonky to start. But I'm just gonna do some dabs, get a little on the back side, and I like to give it a dab. And then I've got about this much left, which is probably still just a little bit too much, but it's fine for now. So I'm gonna place my petal and press down. And there is a good amount of glue that's coming out here. So I'm gonna take the flat end. I'm gonna go around and clean this up, kind of wipe off. I don't like to leave a lot of glue kind of just around, you know, because it makes it hard to glue things on later. Sometimes you wanna glue something down, but there's a glob of glue kind of from a previous project all up in your way. And you know, the other thing to remember, friends, is that you can do whatever the fuck you want. You can do what I'm saying, or you could just glob that shit up and go ham and see how it fucking works out for you. You know what I mean? It's all in the motion of the ocean. You can do whatever the fuck you want. These, once I have a little dab pile going, once it's got a bunch of glue on it, sometimes I'll just dab straight on there. That's a pretty good amount of glue on the back of this. You know, it's not thick. So we're just gonna drop it in there. And that's fine enough. Yeah, like that's a pretty good amount there. That's probably just about perfect. Oh yeah, can be this one. And then see, we're following the pattern, but we're also kind of not. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be exactly the exact shapes of the petals. I'm going for 7 petals around a yellow center. I'm trying to give myself at least like a millimeter of space between the pieces. You should be able to kind of touch down to the ground with this guy in between the glass pieces. Again, that's just so you have enough space for the grout to get in there, get down to the glass, and create the like long-term structure for the piece. It is okay to have areas where you have your glass pieces pushed up against each other really closely. So see in here, I have some areas where they're pushed close together. And here, things are kind of tight. There's some spots in here where things definitely don't have the amount of space that you kind of need. But then I have pockets where things are thicker and open and you're definitely getting the full strength. So as long as you're getting kind of a mix of the two, you're fine. And you can wield the spacing between the glass pieces as another element of design. So trying to accentuate some lines, I might leave more space in between glass in certain areas of the piece versus others. So like in here, even though they're tiny little shards, I wanted it to look really filled in. So I had them all pretty far, pretty close in, pretty squished. And then, you know, here I wanted there to be a central line in this leaf. So I've left more of a gap there so that that comes through. Same thing here. See, I've left a central vein line so that this leaf has 2 halves. And I've also angled the glass so that the gaps in between I'm using as lines for the piece. Same with all of these. Just scrape it. And this will clean good enough. If you leave it on overnight and your glue gets super hard and you can't get it off with this, leave a wet paper towel on top of the glue for like 15 minutes and it'll rehydrate enough that you can scrape it off. Alright, so we got all the daisies. Just double check that I got the iridescent side up on all them petals. Missed one. Hello, bitch. Let me uncover you. You are meant to shine like a diamond in the rough. Are you the only one? Nobody else like you. You just you, one of a kind. Checkmate. Boom, baby. Alright. Next up, all the little flowers. I'm going to start probably with like the 4-way out and then build the little sideways ones. We'll see. When you're placing them down, the other reason you want kind of a sweet spot of glue. We talked about doing too much, but if you don't do enough glue and you don't have a solid, even coating underneath the entire piece, your grout can get up underneath and block light and look shitty and that kind of stuff. So it's a bit of a sweet spot. You can stumble your way through, but until you you want to get just a tiny bit. Let's see if I can show you. See just around this piece. So that little edge, I've wiped some off. There's some other spots where there's more hanging out. A good solid even coat. So you have just a little bead of glue around the entire base of your piece. Word. This is where I personally am gonna stop fucking with putting my glue on my piece. I'm gonna start putting it on this piece of glass. It's easier for me to work that way. I have a bigger space to kind of dab things. I don't have to clean up as often. I like that better. If you're like, Kim, I don't have an extra piece of glass. Do you have an extra photo frame at your house? Because if you do, then you have a piece of glass. You can clean the glue up afterwards. It won't ruin the piece of glass. I wouldn't use something that you super duper care about, but for the most part, he's fine. Alright, we're going to do these dudes, the little flowers. We're going to do it in a time lapse again. Arrivederci. Alright, small flowers are done. Just looking right, and then once we get the greens in here, it's gonna pow.